きるさ。あんたは生きて、生き抜いてから死んでください。死んで生き抜けたなんて俺が許さねえ。覚悟しろよ。俺は一生おめえにつきまとってやる。
This is the greatest game I have ever played. No, this is not recency bias taking a hold on me, nor is it the result of hyperbole or over-exaggeration. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. A monument to almost 20 years worth of history. How could I ever find the words to express what this game means to me? How could I ever find the words to express feeling every emotion on the spectrum over the last 2 weeks? How is this game real? Well, today, I want to try and find those words and express just how much Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth has truly become the best game I have ever played. This is probably going to be the most emotional, most vulnerable, and most raw that I will ever be. But with all that being said, let's begin. Our story begins in 2022, 3 years after the Omi Alliance and Tojo clan disbanded, known by the society at large as the Great Dissolution. We see that Ichi is currently working as a Hello Work contractor, helping former ex-Yakuza to get new jobs and become acclimated into society as a result of the 5-year Yakuza clause, where former ex-Yakuza are pretty much left out to rot. 1 year later, Ichi, as well as some of his other friends that are associated with him, end up losing their job suddenly, and they have no real understanding as to why, until they eventually find out that they were set up by a famous VTuber. Yes, VTubers exist by this point in Yakuza. Now jobless, Ichi receives a new call to action when he finds out that the Seiryu clan, one of the major factions in Ijincho, is acting suspiciously and bolstering their numbers with former Yakuza, and after learning the reason as to why, Ichi is sent all the way across the world to Hawaii for a chance to reunite with his mother, getting into trouble simply the moment he steps foot out of the airport, meeting all kinds of new friends, and Kiryu even shows up to help bail him out as the two work together to uncover the mysteries of Hawaii, something bigger than themselves. Also, Kiryu is Cancer. This might seem like a major spoiler and something that I should talk about much later, but not only was this revealed in the trailers for Infinite Wealth, but this is something that's revealed by Chapter 3. And really, Kiryu's condition is the main emotional foundation for Infinite Wealth, outside of course, the prospect of Ichi meeting his mother for the first time. Throughout the entirety of this series, we've seen Kiryu go through several moments of trauma that no one person should ever have to experience. He's lost his father figure, several brother figures, the love of his life, he's lost rivals, people he could have redeemed, and throughout all of it, he's still here. And he's even had to give up his name as well in order to protect his loved ones. And now, the one thing that he felt he could always count on, his body, is now slowly starting to give out on him too, as he's forced to pick and choose his battles. For the first time in his life, Kiryu is no longer the invincible dragon of Dojima that we've once known him for, and for the first time, he's now truly mortal. And though Kiryu knows he has to limit himself, he still tries to treat his body with the same reckless abandon he always has. A broken man in his mid-50s, Kiryu has effectively given up on himself entirely, believing that treatment is an impossibility despite the odds for recovery not necessarily being zero. Kiryu has no real cling to life by this point as a result of all the traumas he's endured, and believes that the rest of his life would be better put to use doing something productive in order to give his life the meaning he felt he's always lacked. And it's Ichi, as well as all of his other friends, that helped to pull Kiryu out of this state of mind by forcing him to accept his own limits and trust things to the people surrounding him, and to help him try to regain the meaning of life. And this is what actually ends up splitting Kiryu and Ichi apart from each other as the two form their own parties. And to speak more on the relationship between Ichiban and Kiryu as a whole, it's one of my absolute favorites and is easily one of the greatest in the entire series by far. In Like a Dragon, Ichiban didn't really know who Kiryu was as a person, but once Infinite Wealth rolls around, he has full knowledge of who Kiryu is and truly does admire and look up to him. But at the same time, he's not willing to let Kiryu's actions slide and is fully willing to call Kiryu out on his lack of self-worth and tell him the things he needs to hear. After all, Ichi is the main guy vouching for Kiryu to keep living. Ichi and Kiryu throughout all of Infinite Wealth are like a dynamic duo, providing the other what they sorely lack and helping them to fill out their own deficiencies. Kiryu acts as a cool, level-headed advisor, helping Ichi to get through certain situations with his experience, while Ichi provides Kiryu with the fires of youth that Kiryu himself feels have burned out a long time ago. The two have such a strong mutual understanding that they even have perfectly coordinated combo moves that they can perform at will without even saying anything to each other. His connection with Kiryu is so deep that they're performing things that Kiryu himself hasn't done since Akiyama in Yakuza 6. And if you want to take it a step further, since Nishiki all the way back in Yakuza 0. I love these two so much. No other protagonist will ever be like Ichiban Kasuga or Kazuma Kiryu, and it's not even close. To speak on the cast at large, everyone pulls their weight and is an amazing character, and the new characters this game introduces are wonderful as well. Chitose especially is amazing. She's one of the best female characters in the entire series, and that is something that has acted as one of Yakuza's greatest detriments, but in Infinite Wealth, it's one of its greatest strengths between her, Sonhee, and Saiko. Tomi is also an amazing character, and Sawashiro and Yamai are two of the series' best antagonists. And of course, I didn't forget about the fact that Danny Trejo, of all people, made a special guest appearance in Infinite Wealth, which just adds to the greatness of this game. This game fired on all cylinders and hit its mark effortlessly, and no mark did it hit greater than its gameplay. The gameplay of Infinite Wealth is some of the best that I have ever experienced within a JRPG, and takes everything that was good about Like a Dragon's gameplay and improves on it tenfold. From the little details, such as us now having a visual indicator as to how close or far we can position our characters at any given time, as well as us knowing when we'll be able to pick up a weapon and use it, to some of the more advanced elements such as characters being able to perform normal combo attacks within the vicinity of each other, as well as each individual character within both Kiryu and Ichiban's parties having their own special tag team attacks they can perform with the main party leader once the infinity gauge or hype gauge is full, to Ichiban and Kiryu themselves having their own special gimmicks as main party leaders, really goes to show how much thought was put into the gameplay of Infinite Wealth. And if you really want to take it a step further, also goes to show just how much Ichiban has affected Kiryu on a personal level, because Ichiban's schizophrenia now influences Kiryu to the point where his life is seen through a JRPG lens as well. Though Kiryu is just as easily capable of breaking the JRPG delusion himself by taking matters into his own hands and literally changing the genre of game we're playing on the fly. It's just the coolest thing ever that Kiryu can just get tired of Ichiban's schizophrenia particles influencing him, turn the game into an action game, and perform the same stun loops he's been capable of performing in the past. Another amazing thing about this game is, of course, the diversity of jobs that you are capable of applying to each of your characters. Just like in Like a Dragon, in Infinite Wealth, you're capable of changing the job of your character to completely change up their moveset. From character-specific jobs like Ichi's hero job or Kiryu's Dragon of Dojima job, which is easily the coolest thing ever. I love how they incorporated style switching into his job, between his regular brawler style, to his rush style, to his beast style, to the rest of the game's individual jobs, which you unlock with Ichi or even Chitose performing literal Yakuza 4 or Yakuza 5 style revelations where they have an epiphany as to how they can beat people up in a different way. The game also incorporates the inheritance system where you're able to mix and match different skills from other jobs to your main job and sort of create your own special builds. There's a lot of room for self-expression here that I myself haven't really gotten into myself, but nevertheless, you can make any build that you really want, all while still keeping your preferred job. And to speak more on the game at large, this is without question the biggest Yakuza game that has ever been produced, and it's not even close, trumping the likes of Yakuza 5 with ease. And this is Yakuza 5 we're talking about, the game with like 6 individual cities. This game has Ijincho and Honolulu, and both of those cities are bigger than your average Yakuza 5 city, and it's not even close. All while this game still has Kamurocho in its back pocket as well. There's no shortage of fun to be had in Infinite Wealth. You've got your karaokes, of course, bringing back songs like Bakamitai, Judgment, Machine Gun Kiss, having songs like Honolulu City Lights. This is easily one of the biggest selections of songs I've ever seen. You can explore city-specific dungeons with both Ichi and Kiryu, with this robotic monstrosity waiting for Ichi at the end of his. Work as an Uber driver. Can Quest also makes its triumphant return in Infinite Wealth, but this time with Kiryu at the helm. And the Onabara Vocational School makes a comeback as well, where you can test your knowledge to increase your personality stats. Of course, what would any Yakuza game be without literally having the most weirdly intricate parody of Pokemon I have ever seen in the Sujimon League? And probably the quintessential side content of this game, Dondoko Island. This by itself is the most expansive side quest that I have ever seen within this series. This is more expansive than Saijima's bear hunting minigame in Yakuza 5, and once again, it's not even close. This is something that deserves its own video entirely because of how expansive it is. But basically, this is a minigame where Ichiban has to take a once lavish 4-star resort and raise it from 1 star all the way to a 5-star resort. And to do so, you end up having to clear out areas of the island that have been infested with garbage, sell items to make money, build different things to help attract people to the resort, etc. And eventually, once you get it to a 5-star resort, this becomes one of your main moneymakers throughout the entire game. Ichi even rides a dolphin to get there at all, which is not important to the actual mechanics of Dondoko Island. I just think it's funny. And me, you know I love my sub-stories. And this game probably has the most insane ones that I've ever seen in the series. From chasing after a baby carriage in the streets to find this guy in it, to fighting a giant flying Roomba that tried to abduct a cow, to Ichi becoming a wind shaman for like 10 minutes. And last but certainly not least, you have drink links with each of your friends in each individual party, allowing you to become closer with them, which then translates to gameplay. I love all of the drink links in this game, and they all help me to love each cast member even more than I did before. The walk and talk finales also help with this, as each character gets their own individual friendship bingo card, and once you fill it out, you get a special bonding moment with that specific friend where you take a picture and cement your friendship forever. Top to bottom, Infinite Wealth is packed to the brim with so much content, so much that it honestly feels a bit overwhelming, but once you really get into it, it's just an incredibly fun time exploring Hawaii and just seeing what the game has to offer. It's easily one of the most fun video games of all time. Yakuza's greatest theme as the series has persisted through the years has been one about family and the importance of parental figures and having people around you to get you through the times where otherwise you don't know if you would survive. Kiryu wanted to be like Kazuma, and Ichiban worshipped the very ground that Masami Arakawa walked on. These two idolized their parental figures and modeled their ideals and philosophy around them because they gave them the ability to do the one thing they felt that they never could: the ability to dream. Throughout Infinite Wealth, this theme of family is the most potent it's ever been in the series, and is present in not just characters like Ichiban and Kiryu, but throughout the entire cast with characters like Chitose as well. Chitose struggles with coming to love and understand her family as a result of her life being manufactured, and her using the internet as a form of escapism in order to feel something real and genuine. She was envious of the fact that Ichiban didn't have anything in life that held him down the way that she did, and it's through Ichiban's actions throughout the game that causes her to recognize that she can no longer run away from her family nor from her own actions, and she takes accountability and moves forward as a person. All of this is because Ichiban gave her the strength and courage to constantly push forward, even when the odds were stacked against her. Ichiban struggles with coming to terms about whether or not Akane is his mother and how he should perceive her going forward. Which is why when he does eventually meet Akane, Ichi is sort of flat-footed and awkward as to how to approach her, but eventually once the two get some valuable mother and son time together, Ichi is able to say the one thing that he truly means to say, which is to thank her for giving him the life that he now has. Ichi's been dealt a bad hand in life, but he's made it work and he's found the things that are important to him, and he can't help but be grateful to the person that gave him that life to begin with. It's one of those scenes that really highlights the greatest characteristics of Ichiban as a character, but even more so, highlights Akane as another great female character in Infinite Wealth. And is honestly a breath of fresh air, because by the end of the game, Akane survives the events of Infinite Wealth and is able to live her own life. This is sort of a break from the norm because traditionally in Yakuza, parental figure characters typically die unceremoniously. It feels like in this game, RGG Studio has learned from all their mistakes and they recognize that having parental figure characters alive serves as better potential for characterization in the games going forward. And of course, we have the series' quintessential main character, Kiryu Kazuma. The idea of family is one that has been integral to the character of Kiryu Kazuma since his very inception. But in this game, that feeling of family doesn't necessarily come from the bond between parent and child, but rather the people surrounding Kiryu telling him that they too will share his burdens rather than letting him suffer on his own. It's these friends that create this feeling of family. And it's these friends that give Kiryu the idea to start writing a bucket list. This is the game where Kiryu starts to focus on his own self-worth for the first time, as well as focusing on treating himself as opposed to putting others before himself. And it's Kiryu focusing on his own self-worth that truly highlights this game's real theme, the joys of life. The bucket list doesn't simply serve as a way for Kiryu to quell his many regrets, but instead acts as a way for Kiryu to see that life still has more to offer him and that it's still worth living. Kiryu's sections of Infinite Wealth's story contain some of the most powerful moments ever conceived in a Yakuza game. From Kiryu coming face to face with Kashiwagi and Injincho and learning that he's alive after all the years he spent thinking he was dead after Yakuza 3, to Kiryu reminiscing on everything from his past as the end slowly starts to approach, which has evoked some of the most primal emotion that I've ever felt. They even found a way to somehow canonize Ishin, Kenzan, and Dead Souls all at the same time. To Kiryu's own special sub-stories via his Memoirs of a Dragon, where he encounters several figures that have influenced his life, such as Komaki, Koyuki, and Yuki, and you even have a boss fight against Lao Kalong, where his Yakuza 3 theme plays. To all of the lifelinks with Date, where Date helps Kiryu to meet with several characters that are integral to his life, such as Taichi, Chief Nakajima from Yakuza 5, Kazuki and Yuya, the characters from the Hirose family from Yakuza 6, and even Akiyama, Kaoru, and Haruka and Haruto. These are the ones that provoke the most primal emotions out of me. With Kaoru, we haven't seen her since the beginning of Yakuza 3, where RGG Studio essentially shipped her off to America. And in her section, we see that part of her still has hope that Kiryu is alive, even though the logical side of her believes that he is dead. With Akiyama, we get a full conclusion to his plotline from Yakuza 6, where Akiyama truly believed that Kiryu lived, knowing everything that he knew about him, and in this portion, he finally learns the truth and gets the vindication that he has been seeking for so long. And with Haruka and Haruto's section, Kiryu gets to hear Haruka's voice again after 7 long years, as she describes how everyone from the orphanage is trying to make it by on their own. The connector between all of this is Date himself, as Date describes Kiryu as the best friend that he's ever had, and that there's no way he would ever be able to give up on him. The point of all of these lifelinks weren't necessarily so that Kiryu could just receive closure as his life comes to a close, but rather that by seeing all of these people that have meant something to him and hearing what they have to say about how Kiryu gave them the courage to push through adversity, that Kiryu would gain the courage to do the same for himself. And it's all of these little factors that help push Kiryu in the right direction as he starts to rediscover the joys of living, and his perception towards his own situation starts to change, though at the same time he does his best to deny it, and death sounds like a way for him to finally give his life true purpose. It's most apt in the moments where Kiryu himself tells others that it's worth living, pushing forward, and trying to figure something out, such as when he tells Majima, Daigo, and Saejima to keep pushing forward even when they fear failure. That entire boss fight is one of the greatest in the entire series, and everything that Kiryu's section represents is a love letter to all that Yakuza has ever aspired to be in its 20 years of existence. The moments where Kiryu's friends help him out when he desperately needs it really does go to show you just how much Kiryu has grown as a character, as he started to rely on others where before he would have taken on Majima, Saejima, and Daigo by himself 10 times out of 10. The fact that in order to beat each character you need to turn the game into an action game as you and the character enter your own special dimension, as memories of each of your experiences together flash across the screen with their respective theme playing, was one of the most shocking and absolutely mesmeric moments that I have ever experienced. Hearing For Faith, Receive and Turn You, etc., this was a moment in history that will never, ever be forgotten. Before this fight, Kiryu learned just how broken Majima, Saejima, and Daigo were after their security company failed to yield any type of results, and they failed to leave their mark on normal society. And it feels like that this fight almost serves as a therapy session for Kiryu to each of these characters that he's helped grow in a certain way. For Majima, Kiryu was a best friend, one that he had been sorely lacking in his days as the Mad Dog. For Saejima, Kiryu helped him to get through everything he experienced in Yakuza 4 and eventually became one of his greatest confidants. And for Daigo, he would eventually become the Tojo Clan's 6th chairman under Kiryu's guidance, eventually becoming one of the leaders of the Great Dissolution, and to Kiryu, he saw Daigo as a son. The future of the second great dissolution of the Yakuza needs these three great men at its helm. For all the flaws that them being there would provide, no one would have the same level of gravitas that these three have. And even though Kiryu tries to deny that anybody can help his situation despite starting to think otherwise, he damn sure feels like he can help these three get out of their slump and rise to the occasion. But the one that truly rises to the occasion above everybody else is Ichiban Kasuga himself. Throughout the entire game, the prospect of Kiryu potentially dying acts as a sort of misdirection, as several characters vouch for him to live. But as Kiryu starts to mention his death more and more, and as he starts to succumb to his illness more and more, you start to think that maybe it's not a misdirection and that Kiryu might not survive the game. But Ichi has other plans for him. Ichiban's line to Kiryu about how he needs to live is the nail in the coffin that finally changes Kiryu's perspective. How would Kiryu ever be able to fully find his own happiness if he let his life burn out too soon? It's a complete reversal of roles from Yakuza 7 because now it's not Ichiban changing because of Kiryu, but Kiryu changing because of Ichiban. And as the two embark on their own final battles, Kiryu has one of the greatest scenes in all of the series' history where he slicks his hair back, puts his iconic suit on, and channels his innermost strength for one final battle. And what better place for the final battle of Kiryu's story to take place than the Millennium Tower? And what better theme to play as he climbs this tower than Receive and Believe You? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Having Receive You is like the best thing ever. I mean, do you hear this song? We're absolutely getting to the top of the Millennium Tower with this one. And what's even better is that eventually climbing the tower enough puts us in a situation where we team up with Majima, Saejima, and Daigo for one final time. This was one of the most moving moments of my entire life. Seeing the big four of the Tojo clan come together for one final squabble was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And once we reach the top and come face to face with the game's main antagonist, Masataka Ebina, The time for words is nigh, as Kiryu bears the sins of the Yakuza on his back as well as the backs of everybody that is chosen to follow him. And Ebina is a man that has been wronged by the Yakuza in the past and refuses to let them atone because he feels that they cannot. Where Shishida was a man that represented the very delusions of the Yakuza regarding their philosophies of strength, Ebina is a man that denies the existence of the Yakuza within the stratosphere of the common man. With no more left to say, the two face off, but not before Kiryu receives help from the people that got him there. This fight is amazing, especially its main theme, the end of denial. This truly does feel like a final battle worthy of Kiryu, and Kiryu literally breaks a whole sword, so even when he is out of his prime, Kiryu is still an incredible man through and through. And his final speech to Ebina about how he is sorry for all the wrongs he's committed to Ebina, for everything that he could have done, he ignored it. Now he just wants the Yakuza to atone, as his voice breaks up and he eventually falls unconscious, moved me to tears. Literal tears. But what moved my soul even more than that was the fact that after the credits of the game, during the final scene, that essentially after the entire world knows Kiryu is alive by this point, the Daidoji faction chooses to give Kiryu his name back after 7 years of service, and they allow him to pursue his own happiness. And Kiryu chooses to get chemotherapy in order to prolong his life and live out the rest of his days alongside Haruka, Haruto, and the rest of his kids. Kiryu Kazuma is now the man who regained his name and is now the man who can finally rest and become happy.